Rytoast is a respected figure in the FNAF theorist community, with multiple great theories under his belt, so naturally I decided I should tear apart one of his theories and politely present my own opinion, similar to what I'm currently doing with MatPat's ultimate timeline. So what better Rytoast theory to cover than the one he's currently cooking up, what I like to call the ultimate FNAF timeline. Get it? 'Cause bread? Rye? Anyone? Anyway, the most interesting part of his timeline that I disagree with is his take on the order of the three main deaths in the franchise: Crying Child, Elizabeth, and Charlie. In the videos comprising the build-up to his timeline, Rye said that he believes Elizabeth could be the first, then Crying Child, then Charlie. Oh boy. Well friends, if you know me, I'm a very traditional FNAF theorist. I believe that Elizabeth was the last of these three deaths, and I have good reason to. But here's the thing, Rye has good reason to believe Elizabeth was first too. So how about we go over the death of Elizabeth, what Rytoast believes it means, and my personal opinion on it. So Rytoast, if you're watching, I hope you're bready. Get it? Bready? Because like bread. The only time we ever see Elizabeth Afton's death in this franchise is in FNAF's sister location's Singular Death minigame, where we play a circus baby giving cupcakes to kids. If you follow an extremely specific set of actions, you will receive an ice cream that you can place down on the floor, almost like bait. Sure enough, a little girl eventually comes close to you. As soon as she touches the ice cream, Circus Baby tears in half and scoops her inside her chest cavity. Rytoast says that the animatronics we see in Circus Baby's Pizza World are actually animatronic recreations of mascots that existed in Fall Fest. He also says that the Fun Times could have been built by Henry, but that's a whole other can of worms that I'm not keen on opening today. Anyway, according to Riley, the animatronics were built very early in the timeline, around the time of Fredbear's, and were only converted into killer animatronics by William around 1982. When William did this, it ended up killing his daughter, who he grieved for, and vowed to never leave his children unattended again. So he did what any good parent does. He placed high-tech surveillance cameras disguised as plushies all over his neighborhood to ensure that his other son, the Crying Child, never got into a similar situation. These are the Fredbear plushies we see in FNAF 4. Here's the thing though, according to Rytoast, Crying Child saw what happened to his sister Elizabeth. This caused his intense fear of the animatronics and is why we see an empty sister's room in the FNAF 4 house. So he knew full well that he shouldn't get close to the things. But along came Michael Afton, who decided it would be funny to forcefully stuff his younger brother into one, right after his sister disappeared after being around an animatronic. Yeah, Mike's not that smart. After the event, Crying Child dies, which makes William super mad and leads him placing Michael in a nightmare chamber linked to his underground experiment bunker. I've explained what these are a gazillion times already, but to give you a quick recap, they're experiment rooms created by William to, well, experiment on children in order to learn about agony and fear. So he places Michael in one of those chambers and keeps tabs on him for a couple of years, until 1987 when he tasks Mike to go and work at the FNAF 2 location. This is the initial chunk of Rytoast's ultimate timeline, and the one I'm going to be breaking down today. Interestingly enough, I disagree with most of the points he brings up, but I'll be constructive about it. His conclusions are just as valid as mine, but I still want to take a look at them through my own lens. So let's get right into it. First off, I really like the idea that the Fun Times started out as characters in Fall Fest. It makes sense and explains why such seemingly random characters could come out of nowhere and start their own location. After all, the Freddy's characters became popular thanks to a pre-existing piece of media, the Fredbear and Friends show. What I don't like is the idea that they used to be normal animatronics before being converted into child kidnapping machines. While there is evidence against that idea, what I want to bring up is the main problem with this theory. There's not much evidence for it. The only piece of lore that helps Rytoast's theory, in my opinion, is the fourth closet, where a Charlie bot built by Henry is converted into Circus Baby by William, and the FNAF 6 Insanity ending, where Henry talks about small souls trapped in prisons of his making set to new purpose. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Whenever the book trilogy is involved, I usually discredit it. People tend to forget this is a very early piece of media, predating any of the new elements of the timeline. So things could have changed. As for the Insanity ending speech, I feel like Henry's talking about the original animatronics, namely Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, who were set to new purpose by William, who used them in his Remnant experiments. I don't think this line is referring to the Fun Times being converted into killers. Now, let's talk about the actual evidence against this idea. First off, the dialogue we hear at the beginning of Sister Location literally states Afton built these things. The board member says there's no doubting what Afton has achieved. Afton is the one who made those curious design choices, not Henry. We also see the Fun Times blueprint with the Afton Robotics trademark on them, and while they could have been altered, I feel like if Henry had been involved, they would have a trademark of Fazbear Entertainment on them, not Afton Robotics. This isn't really evidence, but as I stated in my sister location video, I think there needs to be a good, solid reason for the Funtime's existence. I feel like they were designed specifically to kill children from the moment William's twisted mind conjured them up, likely placing their creation after the missing children incident. As well as that, William and Henry have very different design philosophies. While Henry's animatronics usually have bars acting as joints to connect their jaws and stockier, fuzzier builds, William builds his animatronics with very different hinges and usually creates animatronics with super shiny plastic torsos and superior tech. Usually. Anyway, the Funtimes look nothing like any animatronic built by Henry. They scream William. As well as that, the Funtimes look like they're meant to represent the Aftons. Funtime Foxy is Michael because of his love for Foxy, Funtime Freddy's crying child due to his love of Fredbear, Ballora is the mother, and Circus Baby is Elizabeth. I recently talked to fellow FNAF YouTuber Zeterox on my podcast, which you should totally check out by the way, wink wink nudge nudge, and when we talked about the unknown Springlock suits from Sister Location's 4th night, we came to the conclusion that it could be none other than a Funtime Spring Bonnie suit. After all, the only member of the Afton family missing in these animatronics is William, and his mascot, is iconic for being his comfort character and identity he feels most connected to. Now that I'm done ranting about the Funtimes, let's rant about something else. Crying Child's role in the story Rytost is telling. Riley says that the reason Crying Child is traumatized is because he saw his sister Elizabeth die at the hands of Circus Baby. There's several problems with this, the first being that Baby is designed to count the amount of children in the room with her. If Crying Child had been there, she wouldn't have entered killer mode because there was more than one child with her. And sure, you could say Crying Child was hiding, but why would he be hiding? He wouldn't have his fear of the animatronics at that point, so what prevents him from just walking around normally? Rytost uses the Crying Child seeing Elizabeth as the way to not only explain why he has such a big fear of the animatronics, but also why Nightmare Fredbear has a stomach mouth. Crying Child misunderstood his sister being kidnapped as an animatronic eating her. But here's the thing. If this was the case, wouldn't every single Nightmare animatronic have a stomach mouth? Why Fredbear? Rytost also says that the empty girls' room we see in the minigames could point to Elizabeth being dead when the FNAF 4 minigames take place. This is pretty solid, but not totally sound. I believe this girl we see in the minigames was originally supposed to be Crying Child's sister Elizabeth, but her design was changed when Sister Location came out, likely because she looked too similar to Baby, or maybe because she didn't stand out from the background of her death minigame. And anyway, Elizabeth could have been away with her mom or something during the minigame. After all, just because we don't see Mike's room in said house, that doesn't mean he sleeps on the street, right? Now that we've gone over that, let me deviate a bit and explain why I think Nightmare Fredbear has a stomach mouth, and why the Crying Child is traumatized. During the Game Theory livestream that occurred shortly after the release of FNAF 4, one of the messages on the Scott Games website read, "What is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the eyes of a child." During the Night 2 minigame in FNAF 4, if you go back to the entrance while attempting to escape the pizzeria, you can see William Afton helping someone into a Spring Bonnie suit. If you don't see what I'm alluding to, let me explain. What if the reason Crying Child loves the Fazbear character so much but is scared of the actual animatronics is because he saw someone putting on a suit before the events of FNAF 4? He could have misunderstood this as someone getting eaten by the costume, which explains why it's specifically Fredbear, who's a Springlock suit, who has that stomach mouth. As well as that, William is putting on the suit in the back room, in the shadows, so no child sees and gets scared or loses that sense of fantasy and fun. Yet again, what's seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the eyes of a child. I generally agree with the rest of this chunk of the timeline, so I don't have much to say about the rest. So after all that, I beg the question, could Rytost be right? Well, after all of the debunking I've done over the last 3 pages of script, I can definitively say, yes. Everything I stated in this video could be swapped around and used as evidence to support Riley's theory. The reason the blueprints say Afton Robotics is because William stole the design, and the novel trilogy solidifies this idea. FNAF theorizing is an objective trade. It's not about who's right or wrong, it's about playing around with different ideas and deciding on the ones you want to support. Now, there's a lot of evidence that could discredit Rye's theory, but more importantly, we have to remember that FNAF is a story. Having super high-tech AI animatronics at a time when William and Henry still use the Springlocks is kinda counterintuitive. This, and not the evidence, is my big qualm with Rytost's theory. Rytost has said on his podcast that he doesn't really believe that Elizabeth is first anymore, but I was already working on this video when he said that, so why throw away a good idea? With that, friends, I conclude my analysis of Rytost's ultimate timeline. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and keep an eye out for all the other fun videos coming this May. As well as that, go support my brand new merch wave. Depending on the amount of sales my new stuff gets, I'll do different fun things on the channel. So what you waiting for? Check it out. But most importantly, remember, never stop overthinking.